A very warm welcome to GMT. It is midday here in London, 7 in the morning in Washington, D.C., 7 p.m. in Bangkok, where Thailand's Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra is under intense pressure following anti-government protests across the capital. In the most dramatic incident, hundreds of demonstrators invaded the headquarters compound of the Thai army and called on soldiers to join their campaign to evict the Prime Minister. She told the BBC there would not be early elections, but she did rule out the use of force against the protesters occupying government buildings. The Prime Minister was speaking to our Southeast Asia correspondent, Jonathan Head.
I will say that some group of the people might not accept us, but please ask for the many of the group of the people, because the majority, some also support us, because I think we also doing all the policy and run the countries. But anyway, I came from the election. I think this is the one thing that the way to tell that this government satisfied with the people is democracy. I think this is the way that the thing should be. So that's why myself and my government, I came from the election. So I think the election and the democracy has the process to monitor and to be judged and to evaluate myself that whether I should be in this position or not.
Well, in that case, why don't you call a new election now?
If the situation stopped, but now the situation is not stopped. So please, I think right now, that's why we open the dialogue. So whatever will keep the democracy, whatever will keep the peaceful way, whatever will keep the follow by the rule of law, that will be the right answer.
So you don't want to call an election now, but maybe later?
If you call it with the election, we have to ask that the protester will satisfy or not.
They might not be, but if you called an election, it would take some of the pressure out. Mm-hmm. People would focus on campaigning. Wouldn't that be a good solution right now?
I think we have to see the situation, and I think right now the situation needs to contain and make sure that the government can go on and run. So if we can clear this first, and we can stop and make sure the government runs, so we can discuss and see how we can handle the country, how we can move forward.
If these protests carry on this way, will you at some stage have to use force against them, deploy the police, use much tougher methods, do you think?
No, I think we think that the police can be handled with the situation. Because
they're not handling it, they're just backing off completely, aren't they? The police are doing nothing at the moment.
No, I think because we don't want to confront, we're using the law, so that's why. We don't want just only like, we do some like make, move forward and make people unhappy. So we have to be careful, because this situation is very sensitive. It doesn't mean that government just like back off, but I think we have our position and standpoint, and let the policemen follow the step by step. For the first step, the negotiation. Given
how much pressure there is on you, why don't you just give up the job and go back and do your business job? You'd get much less pressure, much less abuse.
The most important thing that my government came from election, so I don't want other way that unlawful or undemocracy will be destroy the system. So that's why we need to make sure that the system still go on.
But don't you get tired of doing the job? Don't you just think sometimes, this is enough, I've given enough now, I want to do something else?
No, I think this is the job of the Prime Minister, have to make sure that the country will be peaceful. But I think myself, I devote myself for the countries. I not being tired, I will not being upset. But I think only one thing that we have to fight for remain democracy.
So there we are. That is the Thai Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra talking to Jonathan Head. She says she doesn't want confrontation. She says she's not going anywhere. But it has been a day of unfolding events and protests on the streets of Bangkok. Our correspondent Jonah Fisher has been amongst the demonstrators outside that army compound in Bangkok, and he explained what had happened there.
This is the Royal Thai Army headquarters. It's been quite an extraordinary 2 hours here. Initially, this door was broken down, the gate was broken down by the anti-government demonstrators. They came in here and they occupied this entire square here, probably a couple of thousand of them on this grass here. They brought a truck in, they held a rally. There appeared to be an understanding with the army officers. You can see perhaps some of them over there, that they wouldn't go any further, they wouldn't attempt to get in the building. So for a couple of hours they had a rally, they appealed to the army officers to join their side in this protest, and then just in the last few minutes they've packed up, they've taken their stage and their trucks out with them, and they've moved outside the compound again. You can see the army here. They were never armed, there was never a confrontation. That appears to be part of the strategy of Yingluck Shinawat's government here. She appears determined to avoid there being any sort of flashpoint which could potentially create an environment in which a coup, an army intervention could take place. So at the moment, order has returned, if you like, to the army headquarters. The demonstrators have moved off. But what we've seen throughout this week is that they will then perhaps be looking for another target, another government building, which they can then also look to break into.
So our correspondent Jonah Fisher there, following one of the demonstrations earlier, just a few hours earlier in the day. It's evening now in Bangkok, and we can join on the line Akanat Prompan, who is spokesperson for the Civil Movement for Democracy. They are currently staging a sit-in at the Government House complex in Changwatana on the outskirts of Bangkok. It's one of three main rallying points for opposition protesters right now. So, Mr. Prompan, tell me first of all how many people there are where you are right now, and what are your plans for this evening and looking forward to the next few days?
Yeah, so at the moment, we're expecting more than tens of thousands of people at this rally point, and quite a few more in the other two, especially at the Democracy Monument. And the people are waiting for Kun Suthep, our leader, to make an announcement at 7:30 p.m. about what's the next move's going to be for the next 2 days.
It looks as though this situation could go one of two ways. At the moment, it's relatively calm. We've seen the Prime Minister say she does not want any confrontation. But if more and more protesters take to the streets and take over or attempt to take over more government buildings, this could get very tense. It could end in conflict, couldn't it?
Well, we also don't want any confrontation. And we reassure that this movement is a peaceful movement. We do not carry weapons. We are not armed. At the moment, we organize peaceful sit-in in government compounds, and our movement is actually welcomed by the civil servants who worked in the compound. So at the moment, this is what it is, and we are sure that in the next 2 days, it'll be the same.
What's the end game for you? Are you saying that your people will only come off the streets and off these buildings if the Prime Minister resigns?
No. The thing is, what we ask for, our goal is clear, and that is to root out Thaksin regime. It's a regime that is cruel and corrupted and that has hampered Thailand development for many years. And we want to push forward comprehensive reforms to restore true democracy to Thailand.
Well, the Prime Minister has made it plain she's not interested in calling early elections, so I'm just wondering what would represent a compromise that would get the protesters off the streets?
Well, the thing is, when she said that she doesn't want election, the thing is, even if she calls for an election, to be honest, an election in Thailand, this is what she is like. She always come out and say pretty words, but in actual fact, what she's doing isn't. At the moment, what we want is to root out Thaksin regime and to achieve reforms. And so this is the talking point here.
Thailand's been down this path many times before. It seems that there is still a significant amount of support for the Prime Minister, particularly in rural areas, and clearly there is a substantial opposition movement, particularly in the cities and in Bangkok. It looks like a political stalemate and one that is going to damage Thailand.
Well, that is probably the case before, but if you take the case of on the 24th of November, can you hear me?
Yes, go on.
Yes, and on the 24th of November, there were more than 1 million of people who come out, and it was a historic political gathering, the largest number ever in Thai modern history. What that represents is that more than tens of millions of people around Thailand, across the country, from all classes of people, from all ages, now oppose what the government is doing, what this regime is doing to Thailand.
Well, we will continue to follow the protest movement and events as they unfold on the streets of Bangkok. For now, Akanat Prampan in Bangkok, thank you very much for joining GMT.